This is a podcast or something like that. Hey, people, how's it going? All right, and we're going to do a second take just in case the pop filter didn't work on that first take. Hey, people, how's it going? Okay, one of those should be good. Wow, there's a bird right outside my window, like on the windowsill. Wow. Huh. Fluttering around, not just hanging out, but fluttering. So you might hear a little bit of, you heard that chirp? Did you hear that? You're definitely going to hear some chirping, and there might be a little bit of wings flapping. I apologize in advance for that. So where was I? Hey, people. Or should I say person? I don't know if it's just one person listening to this podcast or if there's, several. Maybe you have your best friend or someone you're trying to get back on good terms with, and you're deciding to try to bury the hatchet by listening to my podcast together. Maybe you're watching with a family member or some sort of animal that you consider a family member, which is, totally valid and fine. And I didn't mean to frame it that way as if that would be in any way different. Just sort of trying to exhaust all the options here. I mean, you could be listening to this podcast potentially in some sort of event location. I don't know how that works in terms of royalties. I obviously should get something for that. You can have it for free depending on the event. But so maybe this is blasting through a stadium right now. Maybe I'm coming out of the speakers at Madison Square Garden right now, and there's 40 to 50,000 people listening to this very podcast. I don't know. I can't rule it out. It's a Sunday. I don't even know what's going on at Madison Square Garden at 2:18 p.m. on a Sunday. With that being said, we're just gonna, we're gonna proceed regardless. With these unknowns, I think we'll just have to push forward. So I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a nice day or night or whatever it is as you're listening. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're doing well in terms of how you feel and in terms of your actions. Sorry about that motorcycle in the background. Definitely not going to stop and keep starting over. It would be genuinely wild to imagine starting over and doing the same sort of bit or something. Yeah, I would do that for a video, to be clear. It's just that the podcast is sort of on a different level in terms of effort. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're having a good time. I'm doing very well. I'm feeling really good. I'm having a great day and sort of recovering from an interesting night. I went camping with some friends and we slept in the woods. And so I was enjoying that. I don't do that a lot, but I was in a hammock. And so I was just sleeping in a hammock in the woods, and that was really interesting. It was a super fun thing to do with friends and to just get together. I've sort of made like a relatively new group of friends like 6 months ago. I guess I met a few people over the last few years and then met a few people through them, and things just, didn't necessarily like happen super fast. I don't think I've necessarily always made enough effort to, build friendships. And, over the last like 6 months or 8 months, 9 months, I have just like actually, as I've mentioned before, just actually made a ton of progress in connecting with people, and it's felt really good. It's really essential. It's like the main thing my life's been missing for COVID and a little bit before, but I had some friends move during COVID and even before though. I mean, it takes a lot of effort to meet your people, to meet people that you can really connect with deeply, really express yourself. I don't think it's a bad thing. I don't think it's something to be despondent about, that it takes effort. Because they're out there. They're out there for everyone. Even like, people who, have like terrible like beliefs and values, they could find friends. Uh, so yeah, you really can find your people. You do just have to try usually. And then there's obviously a little luck. Um, so yeah, that was really cool. Just to kind of connect with people better by going on a little camping escapade together. Spend some time in the woods and just spend some time in some nice cold water and different, make a fire. It's just so nice. And then the whole experience of sleeping in a hammock, which I've slept outdoors once without a tent. And I was just like on sort of some, comfortable material, a tarp and some other material. And I was at like a campsite sort of, where there are like some buildings close by and, there was like a relatively substantial number of people there and stuff like that. So which sort of made me feel safe and unsafe at the same time. But, I'm 275 pounds, 6'4", pure muscle. So the camera can be kind of deceiving on some of my live streams and my videos. But so, yeah, that's, I don't have a lot to worry about in that regard, being 6'4", 275. But yeah, so no, but I mean, it was a little scary. And last night, like even, I was scared, more of a bear, but I was also scared of like, what if a person came by and just like was fucking off their rocker, and sometimes people are in really bad places in their life and they do really fucked up shit. And so, yeah, you do sometimes have those worries, like what if someone does something bad to me, But here's how I thought about it. And most of my friends worried about it. I didn't worry about it too much. Most of my friends worried about it less than me. One of my friends worried about it a little bit, or somewhat more than me, like substantially a bit more than me. And so we were talking about it, and I was like, the way I think about it is like, I'm not a big risk taker, but at the end of the day, I'm trying to think, there's a perfect analogy for these types of risks. There's something I think about sometimes, something to do with driving. Not that I am a risky driver. Maybe it's even stuff like checking directions unnecessarily. But yeah, basically, which is on a, much different level and stuff. But basically, it's like if you're taking a risk, like driving without checking directions or like sleeping outdoors or like whatever, we all take risks all the time. And that's sort of the point, I guess, is what I'm about to say. You're taking a risk, and so you can worry about it more. But what helps me is just to think, we are taking risks all the time. A piano could fall through the floor and hit us on the head, there's always risks, and so sometimes to do what you want to do, you do have to up that risk, that sort of normal risk of life. You have to raise it a little bit, but that doesn't mean that it's a big risk just because it's being raised from the standard sort of baseline risk of life. And more importantly, I tell myself, look, if I die in the woods because someone comes and murders me, or a bear, snatches me out of this hammock, that's, first of all, very unlikely. Sorry, that was a rock. Very unlikely. Like I recommend try to calculate the exact % chance you think there is of something like this happening. I would say the odds for someone coming by and hurting me in any way would probably be 1 in 1,000. And the odds of the odds of a bear coming by and hurting me, I would say were probably like 1 in a million. I don't know. So like, yeah, I mean, there's really like, you want to break it down that way. But then the more important thing is, can I really live my life without taking a risk of this caliber? And the answer is very often no, Can I really continue in my life on the principle that a risk of this caliber is excessive? I would just ask yourself that if you're in a similar situation. But feel free to let me know. How do you deal with taking risks? Write into verbaljournalpodcast@gmail.com. Let me know. We will be checking the mailbag later, but I wanted to get a quick plug in early For all you people who tune out after 10 minutes, I totally understand. Feel free to write in. Let me know why you tuned out. No. So yeah, I'm doing well. Had a very refreshing weekend so far, and have a good day coming up today. And I had some time earlier in the week to also do some self-education stuff I've been wanting to do. I mentioned it early on in one of the early episodes when we would like read some research articles, but I'm trying to learn more about the brain, and so I've been researching a lot of stuff. I'm also working, as I mentioned last week and maybe the week before, I'm working on a piece of writing regarding relationships, a very, very long-term project involving my work and my experience from my work. So I'm working on that, and it's led to me saying, I really should actually try to do some research. And as I sort of like regretfully admitted to myself, I'm not going to write one of those things where it's just my fucking opinion. Like, then it's like, okay, there's a lot of things I have to research. So what I started with researching was I typed in a few terms to Google Scholar, basically related to, I looked up I was trying to figure out what % of people consider themselves selfish or selfless. And I didn't find anything in that regard. And I didn't look that hard because that's not super important. That specific question is not important, but it did lead me down a very worthwhile path of just learning more about the science behind human selfishness and human selflessness, or prosociality. Antisocialness, selfishness, just think about yourself, not the social side of your behaviors. Prosociality, selflessness, or whatever. There's a lot of terms for this stuff, but they say prosocial, and and I've used that term in some videos and stuff because it's common in social work as well. But prosocial, doing things for the good of other people. Obviously, humans are not the only animals or organisms that do prosocial things, but we do a lot of prosocial stuff. And so it was really interesting because a lot of the research I was reading was reflecting on the sort of stereotype people have that humans are inherently selfish, but then have to like exert power excessively to make ourselves act selflessly, to make ourselves overcome our own selfishness, basically, is that stereotype a lot of people have. And it's not backed up by science, by literal brain science, for all kinds of extremely detailed reasons involving several different domains of evidence, including the fact that the brain pathways that well, first of all, children from very, very young ages, from under a year and around a year, show prosocial impulses, show that they're bothered more when they witness injustice, will focus more on injustice, showing that they're sort of like giving it attention. They feel like it's worthwhile to pay attention to. And then, the brain pathways side is so interesting because they're basically trying to figure out if it's always, if it's always the frontal lobes and the orbitofrontal lobes, or the parts of our brains that are associated with reasoning and self-reflection and stuff like that, then we would have to have those parts of the brain lighting up when we either, witness prosocial things or act in prosocial ways. And we'd also like not really be able to be that prosocial until those parts of the brain were developed. But that is not the case. It's not the case. And I thought I'd share maybe just a few. I don't have anything prepared, but I took as I'm going through research articles, I just take a bunch of quotes, throw them in a Google Doc, and it's like a annotated bibliography, except it's just a bunch of quotes for now. So I thought maybe I'd just like poke through, find one or two to just share. So the first article I found was about how we learn, and they tried to test whether we're better at learning, like when it involves our own self-interest, or better at learning when it involves someone else's self-interest. And they did find that like humans, they literally learning tests. They tested people's learning ability and tested that people could learn information and tasks better when it involved preventing someone else from experiencing harm. And just to kind of paraphrase parts of this article, because it actually helps me understand it better. It was interesting because previous research that had looked into humans and sort of come to the conclusion humans are inherently selfish looked at how much humans would invest in financially for themselves or other people. I think in a made-up task. I don't remember if it was real life or a made-up task. But, basically finding, when it involves their own self-interest, they'll invest more, and so on. So this study that I looked at, which is... when implicit prosociality trumps selfishness, the neural evaluation system underpins more optimal choices when learning to avoid harm to others than to oneself. So kind of, spoiler alert. What they did was sort of, instead of looking at financial stuff, they looked at like the idea of someone experiencing harm. And so would we be motivated to learn better when it means preventing someone else from experiencing harm compared to ourselves experiencing harm? Even though, in a way different from the financial differences pointed out. Interesting quote from this article. They say towards the end, finally, our task reflected a situation in which optimal behavior for the other did not preclude optimal. This was, so sort of interesting. When they're reflecting on the limits of their study, they're saying that in their task, it was a situation in which optimal behavior for the other did not preclude optimal behavior for oneself. In many real-life situations, minimizing others' harm and minimizing self-harm are conflicting objectives, with examples ranging from in vivo organ donation to war. I didn't mean to read this quote. It's not as worth sharing. But yeah, they're saying that a lot of times in life you do have to sacrifice things yourself to be pro-social, and that is true. I'll give you an example just from last night. So 3 of my friends go back to the car to bring stuff back to the car before we go to sleep and stuff, because they felt like getting rid of some stuff. So they do a little trek back. We weren't too far away from civilization, so they go do that. And one of the friends wanted to go to sleep because they were really tired. And so I didn't really care either way about going back to the car or, staying at the campsite. And so I was like, okay, I'm just going to stay at the campsite because this person's not going to go to sleep and just be alone. That seems pointless to just leave someone alone when there's, 5 of us. We really need to split up into 4 and 1. So I just stayed and I sat alone and they went to sleep because they wanted to go to sleep. And so I just sat alone in the dark by a fire and maintained the fire, which was really fun and cool. But yeah, it was kind of spooky. I'm not going to lie. I was just, and you could be listening to this and you're like, huh, that's weird. But I don't know. Yeah, I guess if you do this a lot, then maybe you're used to it. Or if you haven't, maybe you don't realize. But I mean, you really can't see all that much around you. And it's fun to look into a fire, but that itself sort of blinds you to everything else going on. And yeah, I just couldn't, I would periodically have anxiety. I couldn't fully get rid of that, but it was still a very enjoyable experience. But in a way, I did make a personal sacrifice. I would have preferred to go walk with the group and check out the stars and stuff like that. But I made a slight personal sacrifice that no one asked me to do because I thought it would be the right thing to do. And so that's a very small example. But obviously, yeah, it's true that, you would want to test people's abilities in that way to really understand prosociality. Another sort of criticism to the way prosociality is researched that comes from another study I read is they point out that some of this research doesn't really look at, it'll look at kids 1, 2 years old or whatever, and it'll say, oh wow, they can realize when injustice is happening and they care about it, and they really do, and it's really fascinating, without being taught to do it necessarily. And some people, not all people, obviously people's brains work differently, but the articles that I looked at, and I might be able to figure out which one, it basically says, that's great and all, but if it doesn't really come back to that child's actions, if they can't learn and say, well, I want to behave morally, if they finish witnessing injustice and then immediately commit injustice, that's not the same as like pro-social feelings. Pro-social behaviors are the most important thing. So I thought that was a really, really good point. So can I find maybe a quote about that? Let's see if I can find a quote about that. Let's see if I can find a quote about that. A quote about that. Yep, I'm going to find it really soon. I am very much going to find it. And it's going to be so good, So, okay. Yeah, here it is. Sensitivity toward others is necessary to promote group living and social learning. The most basic ability to detect signals of distress and feel concern for another has co-opted primitive homeostatic processes involved in reward and pain systems in order to facilitate various social attachment processes. These abilities pave the way for more complex socio-emotional behaviors to emerge. Encephalization of pain evaluation. I think that means to like have it go to the head. I mean, encephalization is a measure of a species' relative brain size. Okay, so they literally just mean like our brain's getting bigger. Encephalization of pain evaluation transitions from being a purely physical phenomenon in which the body and brain reacts to physical nociceptive stimuli. Nociceptive, I've just learned, means like being able to feel tissue damage, being able to feel diseased organs, or like just physical issues and pain also. So it transitions from a purely physical phenomenon to a psychophysiological phenomenon in which the loss of social contact produces psychological pain. And there are citations for all these sentences to different research articles, by the way. I'm just not saying all of them because this was in the literature review of an article I read, which is called Interpersonal Harm Aversion as a Necessary Foundation for Morality, a Developmental Neuroscience Perspective. So to go back to that quote, just to finish it up. However, this does not mean, the encephalization does not mean that there is a direct path between the behavioral and aversive neural responses to the pain of another and moral judgment. These responses appear necessary, but alone are not sufficient conditions for adult-like moral judgment, and therefore do not directly cause moral judgment. So yeah, I thought that was really cool and kind of critical in a nice way. And there might be one more quote. Let's see. This is why I posted a thing on Twitter of a screenshot of one of these articles where they say that infants, like toddlers and preschoolers, like act violent towards others more frequently than older children and adults. And I was just like, why is no one doing anything about these infants, toddlers, and preschoolers, They're just running rampant, And, okay. Yeah, that's, here we go. A necessary condition for moral judgment is that children must be able to negatively evaluate their own actions in some circumstances. There is currently no evidence that infants are evaluating their own transgressions negatively around or before the first birthday. Interesting. Signs of negative reactions following one's own transgressions are usually not seen until around the second birthday or later. Infants, toddlers, and preschoolers harm others at, yeah, that's the quote. Harm others at higher rates than older children and adults. Data from large birth cohort studies suggest that most children substantially increase the frequency of physical aggression from 9 to 48 months, followed by a steady decline until pre-adolescence, when shit goes wild again, obviously. So yeah, some very interesting research that I've been learning. I'll keep you posted on that. Next, I wanted to announce that this is going to be the news episode. This is going to be the news episode. I'm going to read some news. We're going to update you on news. That is what we're going to do, and I am announcing that now. News and action and go. Oh, wait, I should add some music or something. Do, it's the news time on the Verbal Journal podcast. News time on the Verbal Journal podcast. It's the news time on the yeah. So, first big news story of the day here on Verbal Journal News Channel. We got there's a new social media platform. You may have heard of this. A new social media platform. It is declared to be called Threads. And it is a 1984 British-Australian apocalyptic war drama television film jointly produced by the BBC, Nine Network and Western World Television Inc. That doesn't sound right. Hold on a second. Can we get our producer on the phone over here? I thought this was supposed to be a social media platform. I'm looking at a Wikipedia page for a film. Nope, it's definitely a film. I'll continue reading it, but it's definitely a film. I will continue reading it if you insist, but okay. Written by Barry Hines and directed and produced by Mick Jackson. I don't even know who these people are. It is a dramatic account of nuclear war and its effects in Britain, specifically on the city of Sheffield in northern England. The plot centers on two families as a confrontation between This has nothing to do with social media. Okay, I'll keep going. A confrontation between the United States and the Soviet Union erupts as the nuclear exchange between NATO and the Warsaw Pact begins. What? Okay, I see. The film depicts the medical, economic, social, and environmental consequences of nuclear war. Shot on a budget of £400, the film was the first of its kind to depict a nuclear winter. It's been called a film which comes closest to representing the full horror of nuclear war and its aftermath, as well as the catastrophic impact that the event could have on human culture. Yeah, this sounds pretty good, honestly. I'm glad to have found this. Soviet troop movements into Iran, as shown in a newspaper clipping early in the film, with occupied Afghanistan in red. Huh. Wow. It's crazy that this was all real and these countries still have nukes. I mean, it is so okay. Here's my opinion on nukes, since you ask. And again, this does have nothing to do with social media, and I think I'm being pranked by my producer, but regardless, it's not a question. Every single country with nukes should get rid of their nukes. And if I was president of the United States, I would say we're going to be I don't know if we're technically the first. I'm sure we're not. Maybe other countries. We are going to be the first country, or we are going to whatever. I'd find a way to frame it in the, patriotic way to trick people, obviously, as you do. But I'd be we're going to be the first country to get rid of our nukes. We're going to be less defensive. We're going to decrease our defense. Our country is too defensive. I can definitely diagnose that. Too much spent on defense. Anyway, so that's Threads, the new app. That's all I know about it. So that's all we'll be saying about it. Next for the news. Next for the news portion of this newscast, I guess. Oh, is that why it's called a newscast? Because it's like a podcast for the news. That's interesting. Next up for the news, this is an article, you might know the journalist Ken Klippenstein. He is popular on Twitter, and he is a journalist for The Intercept. It's insulting to say someone's popular on Twitter as the first thing you say about them, but it is worth saying because he's very well known for that. But he is a legitimate journalist. He's a journalist, and, when people get known for being popular or for other things or this or that, they're going to have their reputation sort of tarnished in a certain way. Some people will make them out to be a certain way. There are many, many such examples, but I have read I've read a number of articles by Ken Klippenstein, and it seems like very high quality journalism. It seems like he is sort of positioned himself. He's positioned himself as sort of this person. Maybe this is what all journalists do, but like a person to send leaks to. It's something that I guess you could probably do with any journalist, but he really makes it a thing. He really seeks it out and is like, send me tips, send me leaks, because I shouldn't say leaks. I don't know if that's the right thing, but anyways, he doesn't just do that though. That's not all he does. Anyways, this article is called FBI hired social media surveillance firm that labeled Black Lives Matter organizers, quote, threat actors. So the byline is, or the subline or whatever, a new Senate report calls out the FBI for lying to Congress about its social media monitoring, pointing out the FBI's hiring of Zero Fox, is I guess the social media surveillance firm. All right, so let's check it out. The FBI's primary tool for monitoring social media threats is the same contractor that labeled peaceful Black Lives Matter protest leaders DeRay McKesson and Janetta Elzy as, quote, threat actors, requiring, quote, continuous monitoring in 2015. What? Oh my gosh. What? Like, there's so much information in that sentence. Like, the fact that it's just stated, like, oh yeah, the FBI, like, the opening sentence is the FBI's primary tool for monitoring social media threats. Like, that's not, there's no comma there. It is, but the opening clause of this first sentence here is just so wild because they don't even explain it. But like, yeah, the FBI monitors social media threats. Okay, yeah, I guess that's obvious, right? But then, like, there should be like limits to that, right? Like, we don't think the government should just be like surveilling people who, support social change, right? Like I would say the limit there should be like, we should want our government to be not surveilling. It should lean on not surveilling. So there should have to be a threat of serious harm. I don't even know if I would say property damage rises to the level of what would justify government surveillance, but there should have to be threat of significant harm, I would say. And, I have a feeling that the FBI doesn't work the same way. I mean, they killed Martin Luther King Jr., Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Obviously, they killed him. That's not even like really a conspiracy theory. I mean, you could say who exactly killed him. I don't know all the details, but he didn't die of natural causes. He was murdered by one of the many people, and his murder was celebrated. I'm reading a completely unrelated. I'm reading a book about Robert Wyatt, the musician who was in the band Soft Machine and then had a very long and amazing, and has still had a very long and amazing solo career. And I've always been an enormous fan. He's literally one of my favorite artists of all time. And this authorized biography, like with direct interviews with him and a lot of the people in his life, including like Brian Eno and like all these other people he played with. It's so illuminating. One of the things I didn't know was that he toured the United States with Jimi Hendrix and opened for Jimi Hendrix. And so like it was, with Soft Machine. And so it was just crazy to learn that, but it was also really interesting to hear his experience as a British person in the U.S. during the civil rights uprising and movement. And he said that he was in a bar when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was murdered, and he heard white people celebrating it. And that's a fact. And it is kind of fascinating to think about how our schools have co-opted someone like Martin Luther King, and to the way it's never truly really gotten across how much he was hated by white people. By the vast majority of white people at the time, and his movement, and the entire, not his movement, but the entire movement of black people advocating for their rights. It's just like, it's always talked about as if we're like so far from that, rather than the realness of like, yeah, a lot of those people are still alive who celebrated his death, and a lot of them haven't changed their mind. They haven't really been incentivized to. Okay, and they've been sort of propagandized against it. But anyways, we've only gotten one sentence into this article. Let's do the second sentence. The contractor ZeroFox identified McKesson and Elsie, the two Black Lives Matter leaders, as posing a, quote, high-severity physical threat, despite including no evidence that McKesson or Elsie were suspected of criminal activity. Quote, it's been almost a decade since the referenced 2015 incident, and in that time we have invested heavily in fine-tuning our collections, analysis, and labeling of alerts, Lexi Gunther, a spokesperson for ZeroFox, told The Intercept, including the addition of a fully managed service that ensures human analysis of every alert that comes through the ZeroFox platform to ensure we are only alerting customers to legitimate threats and are labeling those threats appropriately. The FBI, which declined to comment, hired ZeroFox in 2021. Oh, wow. So 6 years after this organization labeled... so they've been working with the FBI? Oh, no, I'm sorry. No. Yeah. So this 2015 labeling had nothing to do with the FBI. Right. Okay. So I don't know why that was delivered to a different customer they had or something. I guess that would have been good to say, right? That was a little confusing. It's a little critical support, but yeah, I would just make that a little clear, Ken. But come on the pod anytime. The FBI, which declined to comment. Wow, the FBI declined to comment. It's interesting that ZeroFox doesn't want to decline to comment. They want to comment because if they decline to comment, it looks bad. It looks like they really have nothing to say about this. Like, so they come up with this whole like, yeah, whoops, we didn't look at it. You know, that's so crazy that our automated says no self-reflection. Like, obviously, if they were, not a profit-motivated company and they were instead like a compassion-motivated human being, they would have to apologize by going into, what was it exactly that led to the situation of us sending this alert for two black activists and notifying them or calling them threat actors of high severity. Like, we're supposed to believe that they had a high severity alert accidentally. Like, it was just like, oops. Accidental. We had a high severity threat actor alert for the thing we do for our clients that were probably paid a lot of money. So the FBI hired them. They were like, yeah, no, these people definitely do the type of work we want. And this came out in a Senate report about the intelligence community's failure to anticipate the January 6, 2021 uprising at the U.S. Capitol. The June 27th report produced by Democrats on the Senate Homeland Security Committee shows the Bureau's board authorities to surveil social media content, authorities the FBI previously denied it had. It's funny that a siren's is in the distance. The FBI had previously denied it had, including before Congress. It also reveals the FBI's reliance on outside companies to do much of the filtering for them. That is fascinating that the FBI relies on an outside company for something like that, and that they look to a company that has previously labeled like the most well-known black activists as high severity threat actors. The FBI's $14 million contract to ZeroFox for, quote, FBI social media alerting replaced a similar contract with Dataminr, another firm with a history of scrutinizing racial justice movements. Nah, can't be a pattern. Dataminr, like ZeroFox, subjected the Black Lives Matter movement to web surveillance on behalf of the Minneapolis Police Department, previous reporting by The Intercept has shown. So the previous company that the FBI used for their social media alerting, quote unquote, worked previously with the Minneapolis Police Department during this same Black Lives Matter uprising to surveil and subject the Black Lives Matter movement to web surveillance. Wow. So the FBI likes these companies that are very comfortable and familiar and might have the infrastructure and all the what's the word? Starts with a D for like a folder, something with a D. God, it's gonna kind of bug me. Not docket. It's like docket, but word for files starts with D. No, there's no way this is gonna work. What is the word that I'm trying to think of? Is it a noun? Yeah, it's like a docket. Not a doc. It's like French or something. Huh. What is it? Fuck, this is bothering. Dossier. Fucking dossier. Okay, I gotta write down the time code because not only did I potentially peak the mic, but that was a very long time. That was like potentially like 2 minutes or something. Maybe it was only a minute, but that was a long time it took me. Okay, so dossier. So yeah, I knew it was French. Nice. Okay, so anyways, yeah, you compile a dossier on someone. It just means file. Okay, cool. So yeah, the FBI likes working with companies that specialize and have dossiers, presumably on Black Lives Matter protesters. Basically, if you go to a protest nowadays, and I don't say this to dissuade anyone from going to a protest, that's an important right that we have as citizens of a free society, presumably. If you go to a protest, though, the worth of our freedom is pretty cheap nowadays because you are being surveilled, and you're being surveilled a lot of the time. And this is not, this doesn't worry me or scare me. I mean, it does worry me, but it doesn't like scare me or make my life difficult. I mean, you still just have to live your life. But yeah, you go to a protest, you're being, there's all kinds of other reporting. I believe Ken Klippenstein has also been involved in proof that these state agencies, these state enforcement agencies are using everything at their disposal to get visual and all other types of data on people protesting to have lists of people's names. And it's extremely, extremely worrying as someone who recently read the book, The Jakarta Method. We've already talked about that on previous ones. Okay, that's enough about this. I think we got the point of that article. That is the news article, so important news. And next up, UPS Teamsters are going on strike. I just wanted to mention that. The UPS union. So if you don't know what a union is, it's a bunch of people, basically, who are like, hey, we should probably work together. So what's going on right now is the union of people who work for UPS as drivers. They are, what are they? They're basically, are they preparing to strike? Because they're negotiating, and I believe they are preparing to strike. Let's see. This article is just from yesterday. UPS drivers, or what is updated yesterday at least, I don't know. UPS drivers rally at Teamsters Hall on Long Island with labor negotiations at a standstill between delivery company and the union. Okay, well, and then let's see. With a deadline looming, labor negotiations are at a standstill between UPS and the Teamsters Union. Union members rallied at the Teamsters Hall in New Hyde Park on Saturday. They're calling for higher pay, more full-time jobs, and better safety conditions. Basically anything to help protect them from the normal course of events in our world. You see CEOs and high-level, this is a quote, you see CEOs and high-level management getting lucrative $1 million stock options, and they did not touch one package. They did not deliver one package. Now it's time to be rewarded for your tireless work. Teamsters General President Sean M. O'Brien says. Yeah, that's not a bad point. A spokesperson for UPS tells CBS News New York a tentative agreement is in place on more than 50 issues, and the delivery company is urging the Teamsters to return to the negotiating table. A spokesperson for the company UPS says, what? Wow. I was wondering what the first quote from the company would be. Wow. So the quote from the union is, the CEOs get millions of dollars and they don't do anything approaching the amount of work we do. And the first quote from the company is that, hey, we agreed already to more than 50 issues. So why not come back to the table? Oh, I'm sorry. Imagine how many fucks I give about the number of issues you agreed to. You fucking... I'm supposed to give a shit about the quantity of issues compared to the sheer argumentation of the union. Like, they're just amazing points. If a deal is not reached by July 31st, the article concludes, I like short articles like this, more than 340,000 UPS drivers are prepared to strike. Let's fucking go. If there is anyone listening to this who's against striking, or if anyone is against striking, think about why. Because there is not one reason I can think of to be against striking. Now, I'm a therapist. I am not sure that I can ethically strike. I'm not sure that's something I can do. It's actually something I've talked about, not actually talked about striking, but just the theoretical idea I've talked about with other therapists before. Because it's an interesting question. If you're interested in this stuff, it's a very interesting question. Like, how could you ethically strike as a therapist? I haven't thought of any way that it could work, except for if things really, really, really were bad. Like, there's a degree of badness in the society that it's you need to contribute to the world in other ways, potentially. But, where you need to change what you're doing temporarily. That's theoretically possible. I know it's ridiculous to think about this, but again, I mentioned my anxieties, I mentioned other things. It's like, sometimes you just got to try to use this energy productively. It's okay to think about potential bad things happening and just, you don't have to perseverate or ruminate or fluctuate on them, Next news article on our weekly news desk here. What is this? This is a Twitter link. That's not a news article. Oh, okay. Yeah. So it is a tweet by Ryan Bernardoni. Sorry. I just knocked over an empty thermos. Not fully empty. It had a slight amount of pink lemonade in it. Cold pink lemonade. I don't actually know that this is a journalist. I don't know. They don't say they're a journalist in their bio. Maybe they are. I don't care really, but I will look it up just because I'm mentioning it. There's multiple people named that. I don't know what they are, but they say this, and it has almost 5,000 likes. 666,000 views. That's funny. And I don't know. I didn't see anyone saying they were wrong, but Twitter is basically unusable nowadays, so it's hard to tell. But Ryan says New York Times bought The Athletic, which is some company or something. New York Times bought The Athletic. So this is news about news. So it's kind of meta. Okay, this is news about news. New York Times bought The Athletic, kept them separate from the Times masthead, the company or whatever, in part to keep Athletic out of New York Times Guild, their union negotiations. And then the New York Times cut a bunch of Athletic staff, then axed the Times sports coverage, the one that was under the masthead, and are now saying that Athletic is Times sports coverage. Now, don't worry. I added some words there. This person is not a Twitter Blue subscriber, and therefore they're not writing longer tweets. I just didn't want anyone to worry that they were listening to a tweet from a subscriber of Twitter Blue, and therefore that's why it was so many words. No, I was adding some words for explanation. But anyways, the point is, apparently, if this is true, that's wild. That really does go to show. And actually, I'll let them say it. Ryan follows up and says, you won't find a clearer case study for the intersection of 21st century, quote, tech companies that aren't actually tech, low interest rate venture capital, and legacy company union busting than this. A little bit of a long sentence, but yes, that is union busting is a big business. It is inherently connected with big business. Basically, I just think it's very simple. You know, I don't try to be left wing or something because it's cool. You know, even though it is more cool. It's not why I am or do. It's just very simple. Like at the end of the day, you can tell all my morality, you know, from all the videos I make and the way I think about things. I make it very clear, and often it's some sort of thing, I think, where it's not just utilitarianism, but it's like that mixed with like, so it's like you want to do the most good for people, and also the principles you act on, you want to reinforce principles that also do good and lead to good. And I know it's not that simple, and I know people could whatever. Oh, but you didn't consider this argument and that argument. And I hope people do say that, because I want to, you know, think as critically as possible. But at the end of the day, I have my moral system based on, you know, doing good for people. And so, you know, when you have 330,000 UPS drivers saying we are willing to stop working, which is something that is very kind of stigmatized. Okay. As cool as it is to be left wing, like striking is not, a lot of people will judge you and not understand. You're potentially not earning money for your family. Like it's a genuine sacrifice. Talk about, you know, being pro-social when you are also putting yourself, you know, the thing we were talking about earlier, like that sometimes the real life pro-sociality actually requires sacrifices on your part in your own self-interest. So this, you know, good example. So yeah, when you have that sort of numerical majority against what is obviously not as many people, you know, who at the company would be against a strike, it's just very obvious that people are following their own self-interest, and I want the most people's self-interest to be gratified. And that also acts on a principle that I believe leads to more good in the future. Okay. We've been going for a long time. I think I might save some news for next time. We might do a news part 2 right into Verbal Journal Podcast. Let me know what you think of news part 1. We are gonna definitely move on to the segments of the podcast, because this has already been a quite good episode in terms of time. Good comment of the week. Someone said on the Breaking Bad video, not me slowing it down to 0.25% speed at 2 minutes in to read all 59 pages of notes you took for the original analysis. That's funny. I really do appreciate that. I knew that when I was making the video. I almost blurred that so you couldn't read the notes when I was showing them, because I realized someone could just pause it or slow it down and read all the notes. And then I thought, that's very stupid. It didn't look good blurred. It was very confusing and weird. It didn't make sense visually. And it is very stupid. If someone likes me that much that they fucking want to read my notes in that way, good on them. That is awesome. Good on them. I totally approve. Okay, so anyways, misunderstanding comment of the week. Oh, this is great. Oh my God. I don't get a lot of negative comments. So this was like the only one I got. So on my School of Life selling therapy video, like the video I did sort of critiquing how School of Life presents this weird presentation, this weird confused presentation of the potential options for mental health treatment, and sort of then doesn't even admit it's an advertisement for their own like extensively developed psychotherapeutic like services on their website. Like they have like dozens and dozens of therapists, I think, or they did when I checked. And like, you know, they get a cut of all those fees and everything. Like they have a huge business going. And the fact that they didn't even mention it was an advertisement was like shocking to me. And like I thought that it was very confusing the way they like presented things to try to shuffle you towards the thing they did, which they didn't have to sell it the way they did. They could have just been honest and it would have been totally fine and normal. Anyways, this person comments, quote, how can you get so irate about this and then advertising your services on your own profile? I mean, first of all, if I'm irate, I'm just trying to be exciting, okay? I also get comments telling me how dull my voice is, which I take fully as a compliment. So I don't, and it's obviously I was not irate in that video, so I'm not offended at this at all. It's an absurd thing to say. But it's also awesome that someone could say I'm advertising my services on my profile. I mean, I don't know what they're referring to, but like I'm advertising my Patreon, and I'm advertising more entertainment. Like I mentioned, I'm a therapist to frame, what I say and also give some credibility to some of the things I say. But sometimes it's credibility. Most of the time, it's just informing where I'm coming from. But I'm not advertising. I would never, I've had numerous people from Twitter, like from YouTube, reach out on Twitter because it's like the main way you can reach me. I've had multiple people ask if I would do therapy, and I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. I'm fine, not doing that. I think it's that seems to me unethical. That seems to me inherently unethical. It seems like inherently what's called in social work and the helping professions a dual relationship. Like if I'm like in a chess club with someone and then I'm like, oh, you want to be my client? It's like, why would I be the right person for them just because I interact with them in this other way? So yeah, or like, your mom's friend, like who's a therapist, like now is your therapist. Like a lot of people end up in that situation, and it's not ideal. It's not necessarily bad, but it's not that the friend of the family should just refer out. Like it's not, you don't need to have that dual relationship, but even that's not potentially the worst thing, but yeah, there could be a lot worse dual. So someone knows me from YouTube and now I'm their therapist. That's a weird dynamic in my opinion. I don't think that's the right dynamic for a therapist. Anyways, speaking of chess, chess update of the week. First of all, there has been some top level chess. The Rapid and Blitz tournament that was recently going on ended, and there was recently an online sort of like finals rapid tournament, so 15 minutes each games, and a lot of the top guys. Magnus ended up winning. He beat Wesley So in the final, which was a great matchup. I didn't get to watch most of it. I was working, but I did catch a bunch of bits, and it was really good. Wesley So's amazing. I believe he beat Nordibek Abdusattorov, who is this really fantastic young player. I don't know what he is, 16, 17 or something. He's amazing. That was very exciting. Nordibek was very tired, I think, or something. I think it had been a long run. He was fighting hard, and he stayed in it. He beat Levon Aronian the round before. It was fucking dope. It's like, oh my God, dude. But Fabiano seemed tired too. He lost to Wesley So after in his first game. Whatever. I don't feel like going into it. But I also in my life played a chess game yesterday. I played a classical rated chess game. I went with a friend and we played a few other people, and it was rated, so it was official. It'll count, and I lost. It was a good game, and I actually haven't analyzed it yet. But the story of it, basically, I played an English opening as white, c4. They played e5 in response. We ended up getting interesting position. They brought their queen out. They were black. They checked me at a certain point where I wasn't expecting it, and I did have a fine response of just pushing g6 and blocking, attacking their queen. They brought their queen back. I attacked their queen more. They actually swung. Oops, sorry, I hit the mic. They actually swung their queen to the side and sort of offered / forced a queen trade. So I did that, and then it sort of equalized into a good position, a very good position for me. They had one knight, and they were fooling around, bringing it around. I was stressing a little bit too much about it. I handled it fine. I was doing totally fine. I'm going to analyze it later. I was potentially had a way more space. I had c4, d4, and e4. I had 3 central pawns pushed. But I then completely blundered. One move blunder, let them fork my 2 rooks with their knight. Actually did figure out some very good tricks after that and potentially got back into the game. There was a really cool situation where I sacrificed my bishop for a pawn on the right side of the board. But to take my bishop, they would have to take a pawn away from guarding a knight that I would then take. And then coincidentally, I had like my sort of second to last rank guarded, so they couldn't check me and stuff. It was sort of like a few things worked out in my favor. So I did that, but then I didn't carry it on right. I think I should have taken the other pawn that ended up over there instead of bringing my knight around and sort of trying to check them in a way that never worked out, because I could have ended up having two passed pawns that would have really rallied against them having a rook for my knight. But I lost. So it was very interesting. I really like playing these classical games where you get a lot of time, get to think about it. Fantasy update, big fantasy update. So last week I said I was like potentially going to beat like one of the top people in my fantasy league. Turns out I was wrong about the matchup ending, but it's all because because it was the All-Star break, they actually put 2 weeks into one matchup instead of each matchup being a week like normal. So this same matchup is about to end today, and I fucking took the lead against this person. They potentially are really going to win. They're going to come back potentially, who knows. But I'm 50 points ahead. They have two pitchers and I have no pitchers because I maxed out. I used all my pitchers. I can't have anyone else throw, which sucks because Max Scherzer's on my team and he's throwing tonight. But he's also throwing against the Dodgers, and I have multiple hitters on the Dodgers, so it would have been confusing. When you have a pitcher and a hitter who are throwing against each other in real life, if it's a strikeout, you get a point from the pitcher and lose a point from the batter. And if it's a home run, you get a point for the batter and lose a point for the pitcher. You know what I mean? So it actually works out kind of bad. But still, it would have been good to have Max Scherzer on this last day. But I maxed out my pitchers, and I maxed out. But, interesting. One of their pitchers is throwing against the Dodgers. So I could lose. But I'll let you know next week. If I win today, it's going to be big. I fucking care. I really fucking care. These are friends of my friend. These are like real people to me. I don't know them, but like, I want to fucking win. Okay. I'm screen time report. I'm not going to look at it because I'm running out of time. I don't want to do this anymore. It's not important. 8 minutes more than my average last week. Okay. That's the basic report. And the mailbag to finish it up. Let's check out the Verbal Journal podcast mailbag. I sort of hope no one wrote in this week. Oh, never mind. I'm really glad you wrote in Simply Snaps. Hey, no, I was joking when I said I'm not in that much of a rush. Hey, thank you for writing in. Hey, Mr. Therapy, quick question this week. Have you ever been religious? If not, is there... Oh, good. It's an easy question. If not, is there anything you're genuinely superstitious or spiritual about? Do you think we're approaching a relatively post-religious society, or do you think religion just needs to get smarter and adapt for the times? Can you be less intelligent and ask less interesting questions, please, when I'm in a rush, Simply Snaps? Thank you for everything you do. Have a great week. Thanks so much, Simply Snaps. I hope you're doing well. I hope everything since the move's going well and you're doing great. I've gone through a lot of religious experimentation, not in as dramatic a way, but sort of almost in line with not really to the extent, but in a vague sense similar to the protagonist in the Immaculate Conception of Little Dizzle movie I did a video about. They make it crazy in that movie. He goes through all these ridiculous changes, but I've really scoped out a bunch of religions. I've read parts of the Quran. I've read parts of the Torah, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita. I always sort of get into it, and because I love the just kind of intensity of it, and then I always fall out with it, quicker than I fall out with most video games, which is also pretty quick. But I do like it, but there's a lot you can gain from religions, but there's a lot of prescriptivist stuff that I just can't get down with. I'm always really? Do you really think an eagle in the sky is proof of God? Or I don't have to think that way. That's cool if you do. That's fine. I do sort of I will say I don't believe in God, quote unquote, but I definitely believe it's possible that there are deities or all kinds of different supernatural forces. I definitely don't think it's impossible. And I think, regarding superstitions and stuff, I think being certain that unprovable stuff doesn't exist is as silly as being certain that unprovable stuff does exist. Actually, I think it's a way more silly, because most of the time people have direct experience for unprovable stuff. And then it's like, well, they do have reason to believe it exists. So if so I believe, like, people's experiences are valid. I don't, I necessarily agree with every interpretation someone might make about an experience they have, but I'm open to it and I listen to it and I believe it's potentially real. I am a big, like, I don't want to just disbelieve something without a good reason. And like it being unprovable or, whatever is not a good reason to me. Depending on, like, I'm not going to live my life by something unprovable, but I'm not going to discount something unprovable. When I have nothing to gain from discounting it, it's like, why, some sense of superiority or something. But, and obviously I respect the communal aspects of religion and the fact that it brings a lot of people together. I wish we could have other ways of doing that. And I do, believe it is in a lot of ways the opiate of the masses, but nowadays we have a lot of opiates of the masses. There's Netflix, and that's probably even worse, but, YouTube is good though. Keep watching YouTube. Okay, so I'm going to go. I have actually something coming up in half an hour. I'm going to try to get this podcast out before that. If not, it'll come out in the night, even though it was recorded in the day. Okay, if it comes out in the night, it was recorded in the day. Thank you for writing in, Snaps. Thank you for listening, everybody. If you listen this long, you are a genuine fan of this thing. And I am too, to be honest. I'm a fan too. So we're on the same level. It's not a weird dynamic here. Well, I shouldn't say it. I shouldn't even joke about it. Why do I don't want to be like, oh, I deny that parasociality exists. Basically what I'm trying to say is the word fan slips out because I don't like it. It makes me uncomfortable and I don't, but I genuinely am a fan of this podcast. I like making it. And it's a joy, and I don't need these episodes to all be so long, but, I do like it anyways, because this is me talking to myself, and I do that a lot, and I've sort of found a way to build. Oh my God, I never said it's episode 25. Wait, no, it's episode 24. No, it's episode 25. Right, because last one I said that the previous one I said 22, but it was actually 23. So yeah, it's 25. Yeah, I'm good. Okay, happy episode 25, and, apologize for waiting this long. You must have been like, what fucking episode is it? Okay, goodbye. Have a good one. This is a podcast or something like that.